Tyler will be doing a good portion of the demonstration today. We don't want to focus a ton in PowerPoint, of course. We like to show live product here at Cadence. So I'll give a quick story about Cadence, who we are, what we do, and then we're gonna have about 20 to 25 minutes dedicated to Tyler showing off the 365 Compliance Center. This was a webinar that was really born out of demand and requests from our prospects, clients, and customers, and the industry in terms of what more can we do in the Compliance Center that we're not doing today in terms of records management. So a little bit about Cadence to keep it brief. So we've been around since 2013. We help organizations struggling with digital transformation, and we do that all across North America. So we're in more than 40 project locations. We're coming up on 80 projects, done a ton of document migration, millions upon millions. So aren't the most glamorous part of the job, but we do get it done. And really, that stems with our alliances. So we have three major brands that we're aligned with here from a software product side of things: Microsoft, SAP, and OpenText. To dive a little deeper, because they are kind of the mega players in the industry, with Microsoft, we focus on SharePoint records management, Microsoft Teams, as well as Power Apps, now called Power Automate in the industry. In SAP, we focus on two really specific niches there: vendor invoice management, so that's automating accounts payable, archiving documents out of SuccessFactors, that's the HR system there, and then doing anything with capture in terms of SAP. From the OpenText side of things, we've been in the OpenText game for about 8 years. It's very similar to what we offer on the Microsoft side of things, but specific to HR processes. Extended ECM is a real flagship product from OpenText. Salesforce integrations, we've done some contract management and accounts payable solutions. Tyler's going to show off a little bit of that in the Microsoft platform today in combination with the Compliance Center. So a bit about our story, and this seems to resonate with a lot of organizations we talk to. Cadence is actually born on the customer side of the table. I was working at a county. We attempted to do an implementation with a vendor. The vendor was horrible. They couldn't get anything done that we asked them to do. We blew $300,000 in 3 months. We essentially had nothing done internally. So we fired the vendor. And in a municipality, that's really, really hard to do. So when we turfed them, we took the project on internally, completed it ourselves, and then a little while later, I founded Cadence Solutions and really said, if that's the bar in the industry, I feel we can really disrupt that and move forward with some better values and deliverables coming out of projects. So that really stems into our values as an organization. We name resources on every project. We don't bait and switch from a bid or a statement of work and give you a high quality to a low quality resource. We don't use random resource assignment pools. I've been there. We've got hustled on that in the past. We stay on budget with consistent budget reporting. We tell the truth, even if it's difficult to hear. If you've worked with my team, there are some hard discussions at times. We're not here to, sell you sunshine and rainbows and everything's going to be easy. Transformation's hard. But absolutely what comes out of it is we deliver. We get you to the finish line, and we will instill change in the organization that's required to do things better. That's a bit about us. I'll talk just about the demonstration scenarios today that Tyler's going to cover on the 365 Compliance Center. One that we constantly get asked for is automation of event-based retention. This gets asked to me all the time from the records retention consultants out in the industry, the quasi-records influencers, is how do we do this in 365, and can we do it out of box without needing a third-party product? So that's what Tyler's going to show off today. We also get a lot of questions around sensitivity labels and data loss prevention based on content inside of the document or record that's stored in the 365 platform. So Tyler's going to show that off as well. If you do have questions, as Jared mentioned, just interrupt, chime in the chat box, raise your hand, and we'll get those answered immediately, or we'll hold them till the end. We'll leave about 5 to 10 minutes for Q&A. So off to the demonstration with Tyler. I'll stop sharing my screen here. Tyler, you can take over.
Excellent. Thank you. So as Jordan mentioned, today we're going to be showing off those two scenarios within the Microsoft 365 compliance environment. The first revolving around records management and that automation of event-based disposition. So again, event-based disposition is the triggering of an event that then starts our application of retention labels and our records management clock. So again, records management, the disposition of our documents, anything that has a life cycle, we can consider for event-based retention, that being an employee, a project, or for our scenario, a contract. Anything that has a start date and an end date, We can then automate our trigger condition, being that when a contract status is flipped from open to closed. That is going to automatically apply our retention labels and create an event here within the Microsoft 365 Compliance Center. So we're going to go ahead and show this off. We're going to travel to our tenant here and go into our procurement site. We're going to head to our contract management library, and we can see here a list of the vendors within our organization. If we open up a vendor, we are going to see document sets that contain 2 projects that also have contracts within them. So we know that we have started a new project here today for a software project, and we know that it needs a statement of work. So within our document set, there are no documents yet. So we're going to go ahead and add a statement of work. If we add item, select statement of work, this is going to open within Word desktop. Quickly switch my view. And on our right, we can see a properties panel. So these are the metadata, the columns that we require for our statement of work. On our document on the left-hand side, we can see placeholders within the document for vendor and contract start date. So if we go ahead and start filling in some of these values, and again, this works for all of the columns within SharePoint, we'll select our vendor, and we can see that this has been automatically placeholdered directly within our document. So this reduces contact points for areas where we have duplicate data entry. We want to preserve our documents and our data to be as authentic as possible. So we can go ahead and fill in the rest of the data for our statement of work, enter in a contract ID. We know it is a statement of work. We can enter in our contract start date. For our scenario, we're going to say our contract is to start yesterday. And again, we can see that it has been directly placeholdered within our document. So this works great for standard documents that are highly templated, that are day in, day out. We just need to fill in blank values. We're going to enter in a contract end date for our scenario. We're going to know that our contract ends today. Enter in a quick contract amount. Our contract status will be open after we have saved it. And I'll quickly just enter signatory and signatory email address. So at this point, we have all of our properties and our metadata filled in. We can save this directly back up into SharePoint. So we can select here our procurement site, our contract management library. Here again is our list of vendors. And then we can pick our software project. We'll give it a name, enter in our ID, and select save. So again, this is going to save directly back up into SharePoint. It's going to save all of our metadata that we have entered, as well as the document metadata that we have placeholdered within, really eliminating 3 potential points of duplicate data entry. So now that this is saved back up into SharePoint, we can close this and we can see automatically that it is again here within our software project, and we have our statement of work. So now we don't have any retention labels applied or compliance asset IDs, but to make this more relevant, we're going to drag and drop a couple of more documents that are always relevant for a project and that coincides with the statement of work. So here we've uploaded site maps, staffing schedules, status reports, your common in and out documents that deal with a project. So if we travel back out and look at our document set, we now know that because our contract end date is today, we want to trigger an event so that we can automatically apply retention labels and we can start our retention clock so that these items, again, based off of our condition, will become eligible for disposition. And this is all simply based off of changing the contract status from open to closed. So if we select our software project, find our contract status, flip to closed. Once it is saved, the system then is going to recognize that this is a contract workspace. We have a statement of work within, and it's going to slowly work to start building and applying retention labels and compliant asset IDs. So we're going to wait a few minutes as nothing is right instant within the Microsoft 365 environment, but I'll talk about a couple of other things as the system works in the background here. Is that a feature of the Microsoft 365 Compliance Center, when you declare something as a record, it becomes immutable. So as we can see with our other contracts here, and they have all been closed as well, and then had their retention labels applied, we can see the little lock icon here. What this means is that our document is then immutable. We cannot edit it and we cannot delete it. So again, once something is declared as a record, it is completely locked down, and this works automatically again with the automation of event-based retention. I'm going to go ahead and hit refresh, and there we go. We can see that our retention label has been automatically applied, as well as our compliance asset ID. Now, this is not only just on the document set, but it has also traveled into all of the documents again within as well. So this works dynamically as well with other types of contracts. But again, because we have dealt with the statement of work, we have automatically applied our retention label for our statement of work. So we are at the point now we have triggered our event, again, based off of our contract status going from open to closed. We have applied our retention labels. We can see that our documents are all immutable, so they've been declared as a record. We can now travel back into the Microsoft 365 Compliance Center to see that event has actually been created. So within our events tab here, when this loads, we're going to see a list of all of our events that we have automatically created. And we can see automatically here, we have our contracts for a 2021 software project. So we have traveled again from applying our retention labels to our event being created. And as the Compliance Center processes this, grabs the documents, we are going to be able to make them eventually eligible for disposition once their clock runs out. So we can see this for some other scenarios and contracts that we have also created. If we head into our disposition tab, we're going to see all of the retention labels within our organization. We can see here a count of which items are eligible for disposition for that particular label. So if we open up our statement of work, we, as this loads, are going to see a list of documents that are eligible for disposition. So as I select one here, we have the multiple options available to us on our top bar here. We have our export option so we can download and review. And we also here quickly have a document viewer pane. So this allows us to check that this is, yes, our statement of work. We have our correct dates applied, as well as any other metadata directly within the Compliance Center. We can view our documents. We do not have to travel to SharePoint to take a look at our document. We can see it directly within our disposition tab. Other functionality available to us is we have add reviewers. So within M365, specific to records management, we have the ability to configure disposition cycle reviews. This can be up to 5 users. We tend to see this being the document owner, their manager, a site owner, and then finally the records manager who has the ultimate ability to approve disposal. So if there is a cycle that needs to happen within your organization, we can configure that with up to 5 users within the Compliance Center. We also have the option to extend our retention clock. So if we want to say we don't want to delete this document for another 3 months, we have the ability to do so. And we also have the ability to relabel. However, this being an automatic event-based retention configuration, this should never happen. Again, we want to reduce the day-to-day workload on our users. So instead of manually applying retention labels, everything should be automatically applied. Therefore, we do not have the scenario where we would have to relabel. Finally, we have our Approve Disposal button, and this for our records manager is a simple 2-click solution. It's as simple as Approve Disposal. We can enter a comment if needed. If not, select Apply.
Hey there, Tyler. We just got a question in the chat here
Sure.
from Heather. What type of role does a reviewer need to have access the approval?
In terms of permissions within the Microsoft 365 Center, I believe that is a records manager group within our permissions tab here. We can go into more detail with that later, Heather. We can get you a response for that. But it will be permissioning within the Microsoft 365 Center. That was a great question. So there we go. We can see again, and I can show quickly for those that had missed that. For another document, it's a simple 2-click scenario to approve disposal and final purge of a document. So it's approve disposal, select apply, and there we go. We have successfully disposed of one item. So this has been a start to finish scenario where we know we need a contract. That contract has a life cycle, so it's available for event-based retention. And we can automatically apply our retention labels and an event within the Compliance Center simply by flipping the status of a column within SharePoint from contract status from open to closed. We've also seen the disposition of that document within the Compliance Center, which really rounds out this first scenario of a start to finish life cycle of a contract. So before we move on to our second scenario, we'd like to pause here and ask if there's any questions regarding records management, retention, event-based retention.
We got a couple here in chat there, Ty.
Okay.
We'll probably, can you talk more about asset ID? That's from Bonnie. And can approval of disposal be assigned to a non-RM role? I'm thinking of a director of a department who owns the record.
I'll answer the second question first because that one's a bit of a quicker answer. In order, they would have to be assigned to a group within the permission set within Microsoft 365. So they can still have their other duties as a manager. However, they would simply be added to this records manager group. If that doesn't answer your question, we can definitely send you a little bit more detail in an email after. Now, for the first question in terms of explaining compliance asset ID, why don't we save that one to the end to see if we have time, or we can spark off a one-on-one conversation because that's a little bit more of the technical component for that automation piece. So those are great questions.
We also got one more. Can you set up a workflow for the approval process?
Absolutely. In terms of a workflow, in terms of users that need to first approve the document before it's finally disposed, that is exactly the disposition review cycle that we had just showed off. And that often we find being a document owner, their manager, a site owner, and then finally a records manager who has that authority to dispose.
So thank you for your questions, guys. Awesome. Highly encourage it.
Excellent. And if you have more, save them for the end. We can definitely resurface back this record management component. So for our next scenario, we are going to be talking about sensitivity labels and data loss prevention. So sensitivity labels are within our information protection tab here within the Compliance Center. So as these load, what sensitivity labels are is a method of classifying our working documents. Now, this can be done manually. However, again, with our goal to automate everything, reduce load on our day-to-day users, and again, preserve our data, is that we want the system to auto-identify when we have sensitive data within our documents. So the one that we're going to be working with today is for PII. With sensitivity labels, we can have Microsoft 365 automatically detect when data such as a SIN number resides within a working document. So then the real power comes in is once these documents are classified, we can then trigger data loss prevention policies. Now these policies work with sensitivity labels so that when a document is classified, we can control how that document is locked down, how and if it should be shared, or what happens when it is, and the appropriate actions that we need to take to ensure that we are not losing any of our sensitive data. So for this, we're going to be traveling to our human resources site, and this is going to be a human resources scenario. We're going to go to our employee files library, and we can see here a list of all the employees within our organization. So we have just onboarded a new employee. His name is Adam, and that is the user that I am logged in as. And for Adam, we know that he is going to need an employee data sheet that tells us a little bit about his personal information. As an employer, this is something that we would generally gather. So I'm going to go ahead and generate an employee data sheet for Adam. And on this data sheet, we have things for his last name, address, city, postal code, and their social insurance number. Now, before we go ahead and start filling out this information, we're going to show off a couple of things while working in Word Online, and this applies to all Microsoft documents. We're going to first give this document a quick name. And then we're going to show off the sharing functionality. So with share, this being a human resources site and a human resources document, a personal document, we do not necessarily want this document to be shared. We won't want this data to be lost. However, we don't have data within our document yet. So give me 1 second, we'll try and reshare. There we go. So again, we don't have sensitive data within our document yet, but if we go ahead and try and share this document externally, it's not going to be allowed. So this is industry best practice. This is standard and can be configured through the Compliance Center to not allow external share. However, at this point in time, because again, we do not have sensitive data within the document, we can share it internally. So if I go ahead and select Lee, who is a director, who is not at all related to our employee Adam, we're going to be able to send it to him. So this document has been shared with Lee. Now I'm going to quickly go over to Lee's account and sign in as Lee just to show you what this looks like in his view. So again, I'm now logged in as Lee, and he has access to the human resources site. However, he should not be able to see employee data when that data exists within a document. So if we go into Adam's file, again, we can see his data sheet here. Lee has no problem to open it and see what is in this document and edit. And again, this is something that we want to avoid, especially when Adam enters in his social security number. So we're going to go back and take a look at that. We're going to close this document and we're going to come and revisit Lee in a moment. So again, here I am back now as Adam, filling in my employee data sheet. So before we do that, I'm going to talk a little bit about the sensitivity label component. So here is where we can automatically apply our sensitivity labels. So again, sensitivity labels being able to classify when we have sensitive data within our document. Now this can be expanded much more than PII. It can be anything that has a structure that is important to your organization. So this could be IP addresses, it could be product codes, it could be secret recipes. Anything that has a structure can be configured to be considered sensitive data. So we don't want our user to manually do this for all of their working documents. We again want the system to auto recognize that this data is there. So we're not going to select anything. And at this
We got
point,
one more question in chat here, Tyler.
sure.
Can you comment on audit trail features to determine who made changes to a shared document and also reverse unwanted changes?
Reversing unwanted changes. So audit trail, within the Compliance Center, there is an extensive search and audit trail functionality. That is something that is a little bit beyond of what we were showing today, but that if that is something you're interested in seeing, we could definitely send a video or contact you later on what functionality is available in there. But we can track when labels are applied and reverse unwanted changes as well. That functionality does exist. So before I move on here, I'm going to just quickly revigorate that we do want the system to auto detect when we enter sensitive information. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Right now, I'm just going to enter in social security number, and that's it. So what's going to happen is every time this document is saved, the Compliance Center is going to be reading this document and trying to find sensitive info that we have determined. So there we go. We can see that on the fly, our organization has automatically applied our sensitivity label PII. It's detected that this data is within our document. And now that it is classified, I'm going to select OK. We can see that it has been auto-selected for us. We're going to receive an email. So I can see on my top bar here within my Outlook, I have already received an email saying access blocked. This item is now protected by a policy in an organization. Access to it is blocked for everyone except its owner, last modifier, and site owner. So these are the individuals that we have configured for our scenario here. These can be set for those who should have access to documents depending on the sensitive data within. And the last component of our email here is that we've detected issues from data loss prevention. And that means it's because we've shared this document with somebody even internally. So again, we have our sensitivity label automatically applied. And another way to visually check this is if we close this document and look over here, we can see this red arrow next to our document. It says that we contain sensitive information within and some commands aren't available. So again, this is locked down to only us, site owner, and a last modifier. So if we check back over with Lee now, I'm going to switch windows. And again, I'm Lee. We can already see that this document is gone. He cannot access it. He cannot see it. He is not available to make any changes or take a look at any of the data that exists. So this is the really powerful component of using sensitivity labels in combination with data loss prevention. So a couple of other things to note is back within our document, again, now I am Adam. Again, we can see our functionality is that it is locked. If we open it again, we are not going to have the ability to share. We do not have our ability to share at all. And we can even see the policy tip at the top. Documents that contain PII cannot be shared. So there's all sorts of notices and functionality that we can track in an audit trail and have our users be notified of when these issues exist. And the best part to look at it is back within the Compliance Center. So again, as I had mentioned, we had triggered one of our data loss prevention policies that we have shared a document that contains PII. So I'm going to go ahead and hit refresh. And again, as nothing works instantly, the Compliance Center is going to be working on tracking some of the information regarding the policy that we have triggered.
What prevents someone from adding PII to lock a file they shouldn't?
Prevents them from adding PII. Again, being in a free form document, we'll have to, why don't we revisit this question at the end? That's a good question. We'll circle back to that one. We're just about to wrap up here within the Compliance Center, and then we'll open up the floor. We can unmute and have a little bit more of an open discussion.
Or I don't know if
So
Jordan had something to say on that or anything.
No, I'm okay.
Perfect. Okay, we're going to wrap up right quick here. So within our data loss prevention tab, we are now within our alerts. So we can see here alerts for data loss prevention policies that we have violated. So again, we can have one for multiple different data sheets. And we can see we can set an alert severity, and we can also view a couple of details regarding this policy. So as this information loads, one of the key functionalities is we have the ability to manage the alerts. We have the ability to investigate, dismiss, or resolve, and assign specific users to go take care of this data loss internally. Here within the Compliance Center, we can also see what had happened, when it had happened, who did it, any sort of sensitivity info types, and any sort of alert. So the trackability, the audit trail behind this is very, very extensive. So again, this really rounds out our second scenario of using sensitivity labels that has the system automatically detect when we have sensitive data to our organization, whether it be PII, IP addresses, anything that has a data structure, we can recognize it within working documents. And that ties in very strongly with data loss prevention and how we then lock down the document, control who owns it, and sharing. So with that, I'd like to open the floor to any questions regarding sensitivity labels, records management, and data loss prevention.
I think they peppered you during the demo, Tyler.
I see some hands going up and down. So I believe, Jared, it's okay if users unmute.
Yeah, just allowing Mike here. If you have a question, feel free to raise your hand and you can be, you'll just be unmuted and speak your piece, or of course you can type it in chat if you're a little shy.
I see Vera keeps raising their hand. I'm not sure. Are we able to unmute Vera, Jared?
They should be able to unmute themselves now.
Okay. And again, Vera, if we're missing you here, we apologize, and please send us an email or we can reach up in one way or another and get your questions answered for sure. Thank you, Robin.
One from Elena there, Tyler. In the last step of your first scenario, you had the RM disposing manually. I'm assuming this could be automated.
It can be depending on your retention label configuration. We can set it to that it automatically disposes. However, you do lose the ability to have a disposition review cycle, but documents can, yes, be automatically disposed.
So everyone should be able to unmute themselves at any point now, if you guys are having any trouble there.
I can unmute now, Jordan, if I could ask my question. Vera.
Go ahead, Vera.
So I'm just wondering, just in one or two sentences, could you explain the difference between the IG center and the RM center, just in one or two sentences?
When you say the IG Center, Information Governance?
Yes.
So from a functionality standpoint, is you have a little bit more records-based functionality available within the RM component. The main one being is that when we declare items as a record, they become immutable. This is an industry practice of where when we declare our items, we apply a retention label, we don't want users to be able to manually delete them. So that's one thing within information governance. If you've noticed that if you apply a retention label, they'll still actually have the ability to manually delete. Otherwise, again, they do function very similarly. It's in a sense of you're setting up your file plan. Again, within records management, you also have the ability to do a bulk import of your entire retention schedule through a CSV file that Microsoft supplies. So it's really Microsoft's goal to start leading into industry best practice for records management. It's a little bit more advanced than the information government, and I believe their intent is to start sort of phasing into the records management component of M365.
And I'll add to that, Tyler. This is Jordan. I've been in the records management software industry for quite a while. I think we've worked together in the past a few times. And this kind of parlays onto the question that Akil's asking is, what's the difference between O365 and OpenText? And I've been really impressed in the last 3 years about Microsoft's actually started focusing on the compliance center and the record side of things. And the reason we got more into this side of things was we actually took some of our past projects that were specific to OpenText and I challenged the team here, Tyler being one of those guys, to set it up like for like in the 365 platform. You know, COVID hits and bang, everybody's got 365 all of a sudden, and we're getting a ton of questions and requests on exactly what's appearing in the chat there. How is this different? How can I use this? Which licensing do I need for this? Which is a separate webinar.